discussing today's topics from an African American perspective. This is Another View.
Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Well, before we start today's show, I want to tell you this past Wednesday, or was it Tuesday? Oh, gosh, the days just go by so quickly. Tuesday, actually, the Women's Second Annual Women's Symposium put on by Congressman Scott Ridgell was held. Close to 1,000 women showed up, and we had a marvelous time there. I had the honor of being the morning keynote speaker, and just want to say to everybody, the well wishes that you all sent me, I've just overwhelmed. So thank you so much. I'm glad that I was able to touch so many folks with the comments that I made. So just want to say that off the top. And also lots of very positive feedback about our new initiative, Race, Let's Talk About It, in partnership with Virginia Wesleyan Center for the Study of Religious Freedom and the Fort Monroe Authority. Our first town hall is Saturday, September 26th at 2 p.m. at the Boyd Center on the campus of Virginia Wesleyan College during the One Love Festival. And just before the town hall, come out and hear Hampton University Professor Robert C. Watson and Cleopatra Watson speak on the topic American in Black and White, from Point Comfort to Ferguson, Where We've Been and Where We Are. That's from noon until 1:30 at Monumental Chapel, also at Virginia Wesleyan, and is sponsored by Pax Christi Hampton Roads. The One Love Festival is full of activities for all ages, so come out and participate. You can find a link about the festival on our website, whro.org/talkaboutrace. So be sure to come out and join us. Birth of a Nation is an adaptation of Thomas Dixon's best-selling novel, The Klansman, a historical romance of the Ku Klux Klan, published in 1905. The film was groundbreaking in its visual storytelling and is considered one of the greatest and most important American films ever made. It's also one of the most racist. And African-American artists and activists fought back. And today, we have Birth of an Answer, celebrating 100 years of African-American creative responses to Birth of a Nation. So let's meet our guests who are going to talk about this today. Dora Williams is Associate Professor of Journalism and Communications at Hampton University. Hi, Dora.
Hello.
And also one of our alum here at WHRO,
yes.
So welcome home.
Good to be back.
Dr. Sarah Florini is Assistant Professor of Communications and Theater Arts at Old Dominion University. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Super happy to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. And Old Dominion University is the catalyst behind Birth of an Answer, and we're going to talk more about that. And we are so honored to have Mr. Tim Reid, an award-winning director, producer, actor. What else? Hi, Tim.
I don't do windows.
You don't do windows. Thank you so much for joining us today. And you're going to be a part of a incredible panel tonight talking about the rise in films and in black films and so forth. So we appreciate you being here with us today. So before we get started, for those of you in our audience who may not be as familiar with Birth of a Nation, our Lisa Godley put together a retrospective.
It's been 100 years since Birth of a Nation stirred the great American melting pot. The film was praised for utilizing never-before-seen movie-making techniques. At the same time, deemed notoriously racist, portraying actors in blackface as villains and Ku Klux Klansmen as heroes. The film portrayed blacks as clownish, unable to function without guidance, or as savages who were out of control. There were movements to block screenings, including an unsuccessful campaign here in Norfolk. Across the country, the March 1915 release sparked lawsuits, picketing, even riots, which seemed to only fuel the film's appeal at the box office, making it one of the biggest moneymakers of its time. Birth of a Nation showed how Hollywood could shape public attitudes about race. It set the stage for a movement to change the way blacks were portrayed on film and was a catalyst to the black film movement. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
So, Tim, I want to start with you because back when you've been making films longer than the rest of us on this on this panel.
On this earth, long and mercy.
But when you were in school and when you were learning about film, did you study Birth of a Nation? And if you did, how was it taught, and how did it make you feel as an African American?
Well, I actually didn't study film in school. That was not my interest at all. At the time that I was at Norfolk State, and then Norfolk Division of Virginia State, I was very involved in the civil rights movement in this area. So we were in the resistance movement. We were in, and it wasn't about integration. It was about separate but equal. And that's the area of my exposure to movies like that. And when I looked at them, already in my heart, they were the negative stereotypes that we had to do something about. So I came in as as an activist, and as I didn't really understand the power of films such as Birth of a Nation and Gone with the Wind and Mississippi Burning and 12 Years a Slave and all those. I didn't understand the psychology and the propaganda power until I found myself just indirectly somehow in the entertainment business. And for over the past 40 years, I have had the pleasure and sometimes the pain of being exposed to the inside actions of people who control the images around this world. And sometimes I found myself in the room and I had to be quiet to listen and to understand what they really meant by the word propaganda. And then once, actually, the father of television gave me my impetus, gave me an understanding of what I had to do. It was sort of like I had my epiphany sitting in the office of William Paley, who created television with the Columbia Broadcasting System, evening news, Playhouse. I mean, he was the father of television as we know it. And I was sitting in his office, the last actor who had ever been invited to his office, not since Jackie Gleason, I'm told. And we were talking about a show that he loved that I had done called Frank's Place. And we chatted for a bit. And then all of a sudden, he became very sober. And he looked at me, and he was sitting with the sun behind him coming through this huge window. And I could see a silhouette, like I was looking at God. And he said to me, I have but one question, young man. And I said, what is that, sir? He said, what is your propaganda? And when he said that, a lightning bolt went through my head, my heart, and I was like almost in the Scene Network where I'm saying, I think I've may seen God.
Wow.
It was almost like I saw the truth of not only the business that I was in, why I am where I am at this instant. And from that moment to this, I became a cultural propagandist. Using that, I went back and looked at Birth of a Nation. I spent most of the time looking at Thomas Dixon, who was a profound racist and created so many things, not just Birth of a Nation, but he created the first film about the Red Scare. He created the fear of communism in America through a book that outsold Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation sold 5 million copies at that time. The other book, and I'm trying to think of it, it's not called The Red Scare, but he fostered. One of his mentors was Joseph McCarthy. This guy did more damage in terms of hate and race in America than just about any author at that time up to recent time that I've ever known. So using that trail, what I learned at Norfolk State was to go back and find the beginning, find who heads the machine, find what is the purpose. So what I discovered for my own choice was that the real purpose was to destroy the positive effects of Reconstruction. The images of blacks that are in this movie that everybody thinks that's what we look like, that's what we were, are all lies. Now today, some of them would be true. But back then, they were all lies. They were trying to destroy the images that had been created in 11 years of Reconstruction. So the whole purpose, and the most racist president we've ever had from Virginia, Woodrow Wilson, took aid to that. He was Dixon was the Billy Graham to Woodrow Wilson and several presidents. They then used that propaganda to destroy the progress of what we would call the first integration movement.
Let me ask you something. You made a statement. You said today some of that would be true.
Yeah.
Can you clarify?
Yeah, some of the images that we see that we are producing for ourselves would fall right into the same kind of image producing negative propaganda, cultural propaganda that was produced by people such as Dixon. They're produced by us now.
Now that we're producing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. And we're going to get into that. But Vandora, when you're teaching then about the use of media and culture and so forth. What do you teach your students? How do they perceive in 2015 versus when you were coming up, and also in your studies, because I know you're working on a doctorate on this very image.
Yes. So when just like with Tim, I tell my students to go back and look at what type of imagery, where did it come from. And interestingly enough, last semester, I taught a documentary class where I had my students watch film Birth of a Nation, and then to tell them, okay, I want you to create a response, a documentary response to the film. Now I was dealing with millennials, so it took it was a challenge to get them to watch a 3-hour silent film. But once they got to the second half and they saw the negative imagery and the stereotypes about African Americans, they were able to make the connection to some of the things that they saw when they were growing up. And then they started to say, oh, that's where it came from. That's where it started. So, well, not where it started, but because
close.
It was very close, because I say that Birth of a Nation, it had a lot of ugliness encased in beauty. And that ugliness was that the racism and the stereotypes
beauty,
that
it was
really
framing. Well,
the fine art.
Yes.
It was considered fine art at that time.
Composition.
Right. So once they began to see that, then they were able to make the connection and to deal with how they look at imagery today and how it's interpreted. So that was one of the things that I had to deal with, and I found it a very, very instructive thing to go through with my students on that. And in my dissertation, I had a lot of study dealing with how did the local Hampton Roads community respond to it, specifically the Black community. And I just want to let you know, I'm still in the process of doing the research, but what I found so far, I find absolutely fascinating that Norfolk was the first southern city to exhibit the film.
Right, because Thomas had a connection here.
Thomas Dixon was extremely popular. They adopted him as their native son.
He's one of the most popular people in America.
Very much. He had a play. The play for the Klansman was here. His books and everything were here. He even preached at some churches here because he was a Baptist minister.
He's a Billy Graham of that era.
Wow.
Billy Graham of that type of propaganda.
Billy Graham of that era. He was sought
after.
Of that era.
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely a very popular lecturer. Absolutely.
Oh,
yes.
Every congressman, everybody wanted to have counsel with him.
Yes.
So, Sarah, there's debate now about whether or not even Birth of a Nation, there was debate about whether or not there should be any kind of mention of the fact that it's been 100 years, that whether we should be talking about it at all. I know Birth of an Answer is one way to respond to it, that ODU particularly decided to take a different perspective on it in terms of the response to it. Tell us exactly how Old Dominion University got involved with the answer as opposed to the birth.
Sure. I have to give credit to my colleague Avi Santo, who is the head of the Institute of Humanities, who really coordinated all of this. He's been working very, very hard for years. But you always have to strike a balance with this kind of history because you can't erase it. Because if you erase it and we forget about it, then it's too easy to erase the contemporary impacts, right? So if we can just forget that happened, then we're totally fine now as a country because like racism is over and it wasn't really that bad anyway, right? Because we're just not talking about it. So you can't erase it, but also you can't celebrate it. So you need to commemorate in a way that is critical. And so it was a really important film, and as Tim was talking about, it was such an influential film based on the writings of a very, very influential man. And so rather than talking about that, let's shift the focus. Let's think about the ways in which Black communities then pushed back and said, this is not who we are. Let us tell you who we are. And there was the response here in Hampton Roads. There were a lot of other responses. Oscar Michaud made Within Our Gates. And so Avi really just decided that it would be a much more appropriate way to celebrate the anniversary, to acknowledge the importance of Birth of a Nation and the impact, but really take time to think about the responses, rather the Black voices in response, rather than the racist voices that have already had enough visibility.
Let me let the audience know there are 2 events that are coming up tonight and at the Attucks Theater, and also Monday night at Old Dominion University. And in each event, pretty much the 2 are dovetailing with the same types of activities. But tonight there will be a showing of Within Our Gates, also a showing of a film made by students called Our Nation, I believe, yes, which is a response to Birth of a Nation. And then there will be a panel discussion with contemporary directors. Tim is going to be on that panel, along with some other directors, to talk about today's film. Melvin Van Peebles, Xanadu Davis, and others will be on that panel to talk about today's filmmaking. And it's just going to be an awesome event. That's tonight at the Attucks Theater. It is sold out. Which is awesome.
Wonderful.
But there are tickets available on Monday, and actually keep listening to the show, because we're going to be giving some tickets away a little bit later on in the show. But Monday night at 8 p.m. On the campus of Old Dominion University, Chandler Hall, I believe.
So.
Yes, at 8 p.m. And during the Within Our Gates, Adolphus Hailstork, actually, and a band, orchestra will be performing the music behind the silent film live.
Well, he
composed it.
A new original
Right.
score, and it's being performed by the Harlem String Quartet.
Thank you.
So,
yes.
yeah.
I was just in
excited.
London 2 months ago, and we had what we're doing now. I brought over Within Our Gates, and I exhibited a race movie exhibit that stayed at the British Film Institute for a month in February. But we had this particular thing where we talked about Birth of a Nation. It was the first time in London that they had talked about Birth of a Nation through the eyes of people of African descent. And the film Within Our Gates was scored by an African out of Ghana, did a musical score. It was a very interesting experience, because what happened that week that was kind of shocking was, while that week that we were doing this sort of Birth of a Nation from the Black point of view week, was the week that 9 people were killed, whatever that time was. That
in Chicago.
In
Charleston.
Which is kind of ironic, because I'm a historian. I do a lot of documentaries, and I always look for irony in the documentary, not so much the irony, how life sort of, like I was telling you about the autograph. Mm-hmm. And the irony is that the movie was shot in Charleston, South Carolina. Wow! It was not only shot in Charleston; the church in which the people were killed is in the movie. And
Within Our Gates.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the scene of the South Carolina legislature, where you had the only black people who were black in the movie, didn't know what they were doing, by the way. They were depicting what black congressmen were supposed to be, and the fact that a congressman from the South Carolina legislature was killed in that church the week celebrating the anniversary of Birth of a Nation. So there's some irony and power in those kinds of things that we need to talk about, bring out, I should say, because the whole movie and what it did, its attack, you really have to go back to the poison. When was the poison swallowed? By Dixon, by D.W. Griffith. When did the poison, when they ingest that, and that turned to the hate that caused that kind of destruction? And you got to realize that most of their family lost their fortune during the Civil War, and they hated Reconstruction. And the reason why there were so many blacks elected wasn't so much that suddenly white people said, "Oh, let's elect some black people." They wouldn't sign a loyalty oath in the South. So because they didn't have a loyalty, they couldn't vote. And guess who voted? Black folks. And who would you vote for at that time? So there was a lot of bitterness and hate after the 11 years of Reconstruction. It ended violently, that these people had to vent. We go through the Depression of the 1800s, late 1800s, and they vented after what we would call the first Civil Rights Movement. They vented.
And it's interesting that Griffith and Dixon, they they were born almost when Reconstruction was over. So where the poison was swallowed was from their parents who told those stories, and all that bitterness was given to their child, and now
poison still flowing through the veins of people, same poison.
Yes.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking about Birth of an Answer, celebrating 100 years of creative responses to Birth of a Nation. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So at the end of, because there was so much controversy about Birth of a Nation, at the end of the film, Hampton Institute was asked, the principal at Hampton Institute was asked if they could put some of their moving pictures, as they said, at the end to kind of counterbalance the way that black folks were portrayed.
Yes.
And the principal said, okay.
He said yes. It was called the Hampton Epilogue, and it was basically a promotional film, just about maybe 3 minutes long, that they would use for fundraising when they traveled to the north. So some 2 trustee members actually asked Frizzell if they could, put this film at the end of Birth of a Nation, exact as you said, to try and offset some of that, the negative imagery. And he did. He said yes, to his dismay and discontent afterwards.
You know what Dick Gregory said back in the day? When we take over, some of us got to go too.
And we know that the NAACP and some of the more well-known groups protested, but there was a group that maybe folks don't know about. Dora, you want to tell us
there
about
was
them?
a group. This is one of my favorites.
This is one of my favorites.
Good story. Wait till you hear the story.
The Colored Women's Clubs. They were a national organization by the time 1915 came along, and they were started right after, during Reconstruction. Women who were educated got together to help their community, and they started out as mother clubs, and then all over the South. All over the South. So when the film came out and they learned that the Hampton Institute film was at the end of it, all of a sudden, Frizzell started to get protest letters from these women. And these women were very influential. Many of them were from the North, and they were fundraisers for Hampton Institute as well. So when they wrote a letter, he answered. So in my research, from November until March or May of 1916, Frizzell received a letter from one of these women every week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And can I read a couple of excerpts from that?
Absolutely, we would love that.
This is one from American Girls Culture Club, and I don't know how they sound, and I love to do accents, but I'll try not to. Okay. Now, this picture is a detriment to the Negro race, and the producers think by putting in the pictures of the institution, it will keep the people of our race content. We as club women of this country, representing so many colored people, feel that it should be stopped. That was just an excerpt. Another one is, surely you must realize that having the pictures of our young men and women who are striving to attain the highest standards of citizenship under your able training cannot but be injured by being portrayed in connection with such a nefarious picture as the Birth of a Nation proclaims. Please remove it. So now this is just a sampling of many of these letters where it just came week after week, and the response that Frizzell had to answer this. And at one point, it was almost like, I call it the Tuskegee Institute response. So this was his defense. And an excerpt. But when Mr. Wilcox, a trustee of Tuskegee Institute, asked me, since we could not stop the play, if it would not be wise to do what we could to counteract its harmful influence. So I went with him to the censors to see what could be done. So basically, he was like, hey, it was folks from Tuskegee Institute that came. And basically,
he just threw them right under the bus.
Through Tuskegee and by way through Booker T. Washington, trying to, Booker T. Washington. And Booker T. Washington wouldn't have nothing to do with the film. Yeah. So these women were, and it really surprised me because this was the first time in my knowledge of doing history that you had black women who were not Ida B. Wells, or these are grassroots women who raised their voice and made their voice heard very loudly in that institution.
It's a wonderful story. I'd like to get more about that.
Absolutely. If you're just joining us.
I can't wait for her dissertation. I'm so excited to read it.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about Birth of an Answer, celebrating 100 years of African-American creative responses to the film Birth of a Nation, with guests Dora Williams of Hampton University, Dr. Sarah Florini of Old Dominion University, and producer, director, and actor Tim Reid. Jennifer joins us from Williamsburg. Hi, Jennifer. You're on the air.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say, especially with your guest today, that it is so incredibly important to marry the history with the visual, because it's really easy. I'm not from this whole area. I'm from other places in the United States. And when I moved here 9 years ago, I was shocked. I really was shocked. I started living in the history that has taken place here. And it's very easy for people here to forget the history, but they will accept right off the bat a really bad image of African American people that they'll see on television, but they like to ignore the history that they're guilty of here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, let's get a response from our panel. Thank you, Jennifer, for the call. Anybody want to respond, Tim?
Well, we're seeped in history right now. I mean, the Civil War being the whole history of the Civil War is now being celebrated for the next few years, millions and millions of dollars. But it's always from the view of the victor at that particular. Although they lost the war, you would think, they only do reenactments of the wars that the battles that were won. Mm-hmm. They don't do the reenactment of. I've been working with the state. I did a piece, the history of Virginia, actually, and it was quite a challenge to go through the history of Virginia and have it done, which is now showing in the Capitol. It took 3 years just to clarify some of the stories, some of the myths, the perception of things. It's going to take time, and it's going to take people like everyone here to really say, it's not a fight. Let's just keep going deeper. Let's get beyond the perception. Let's get to the reality. And once you get to the reality, white and black can sit there and go, oh, that's really why that was done. Right. Yeah. Right. I mean,
and that's actually people having to sit with it, I think, is really at the core of what's happening and why we're so reluctant to face our history, because our past tells us who we are now.
Yes.
And if we have to admit all of these things were in our past and all of these things shaped our country and who we are as a nation, then we have to really think about some very uncomfortable truths about who we are as a nation. And that just really disrupts the truth, justice, American way. We are the Superman of the world, and we're so awesome, American exceptionalism. Right? If we have to turn and face this, and not only, as Tim was saying, the contemporary iterations of this, like the Charleston shooting, and how this past isn't past, we really have to think about who we are as a country, and it's easier to just push it away and say, nope.
Never mind. Seth joins us from Williamsburg. Hi, Seth. You're on the air.
Hello. It was great to see you again up here in Williamsburg, Barbara, at the event on Sunday. Yeah. Loving the program. I had I'll just sort of throw out maybe a topic that might be of sort of tangential but of interest. I had the opportunity to go to Germany this spring and visited Nuremberg, and there is a big museum there because that was where the Nazi Party held its rallies and where they filmed the famous propaganda film Triumph of the Will, and I learned there that actually there are still laws in Germany that ban the showing of that movie, except in sort of museum settings like that, because I think they're still figuring out what happened and trying to manage people, how people learn history there. And I think there's an acknowledgement of the incredible power of imagery. And so I don't know if that's food for this discussion at all, but I guess where it makes me think is we need a museum where Birth of a Nation is showing in an interpretive setting. And I hope that I don't know if Fort Monroe is that place but somewhere. I mean, there's so much of our history of slavery and the founding of our nation here that's just crying out for a real world-class resource.
Wow. Thanks, Seth, for the call. We appreciate that. Vandora, you want to respond?
Sure.
Well, it's already Birth of a Nation is already being celebrated in museums across the world. I mean, across America. And by the way, Germany's not the only person that forbids it. You go to Africa and play it if you want to end your life. That'd be a nice thing to open it for one evening. A few countries in Africa.
Well, I'd like to say that with and Seth, it's a great point. Visual imagery is, like I say, it's precognitive. You see it and it impacts your almost your soul and emotions before you are able to apply any critical thinking to it. Say, wait a minute, that's incorrect, that's wrong. So the fact that you have in Germany where they're like, no, we need to display this in a safe place where we can help talk you through it, just says just how powerful the visual imagery is and how powerful Birth of a Nation is, even if we're still dealing with it 100 years later. So that is something that we need to continue to talk about and really sort of flesh out and begin to really think critically about the imagery that we see and that we create with that.
Sarah, I want to ask you about social media then, because as we talk about the whole idea of media and its influence, and it's so fast and it happens so much, is it more harmful or helpful in terms of changing our perceptions?
Oh, that's a difficult question because social media is often more than one thing. So even just thinking about the Black Lives Matter movement that's happening right now, it's not one unified movement. It's a diverse movement. There are different grassroots organizations, different people acting locally. And social media is sort of the same. In a lot of ways, it's lowered the barrier of entry to conversations. So before Oscar Michaud had to make a film, that requires quite a financial and time investment. It's easier for somebody to just shoot a tweet off, right? Just throw something on Instagram. Is it as artful? Well, we could argue no, but it is a lower barrier for entry in having your voice heard. At the same time, there is also it's a lower barrier for entry for silencing voices. So every Black public figure that I know, every activist that I follow, it constantly has the deluge of what they call eggs, because when you set up a new account on Twitter, your default avatar is an egg. So every day they've got eggs just popping up, calling them names, calling them racial slurs. There have been sustained campaigns against the activists in Ferguson, really attacking their real lives, attacking their professions. So nothing is ever just helpful or harmful. It's just another terrain of struggle, and it just happens. It's much more dispersed and much more heterogeneous, but also much faster, as you said. So and to some extent, digital media is the same struggle over representation and voice that we've been having for decades, just in a new setting.
Tim, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm probably going to get in trouble for it, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
I like trouble.
That sounds like the best kind of question.
But as we talk about the opportunities to change minds, hearts, thoughts by using media, by using film and so forth. So when Black directors, actors, and so forth have the power to actually make a film that can put us in a positive light, and they don't. Why would we not do that? In other words, and I think about the Black exploitation films as an example. Was that just a phase, and why would that phase be there? If there's an opportunity for us to take any moment to do something more positive, why not?
Well, almost what I started earlier saying, we have to go back. We have to go back and find the poison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I want to get to. What was the poison for us?
Here's a situation that I believe, just on my experience in the business over 40 years. You have a choice to make, and then you concern yourself whether you want to be an independent or you want to be part of the machine, the system. I would say most people would be wise to go and try to be a part of the machine. It's very difficult to be independent of the power structure that controls propaganda. That's what William Paley told me, the business that I was in. So you get a young filmmaker who's getting a shot, and he needs to make a decision, as I had to make a decision. And you go inside the machine, you do what you can do. If you find that it's to your disadvantage to be too outspoken, you say, okay, what can I gain? But you're always hoping that you will have a word, and quickly you learn that there's no such thing. And just look at some of the movements of this modern sort of renaissance, if you want to call it that. Take what they call the black exploitation movies. That term didn't come from a black person. Melvin Van Peebles didn't say, I'm going to make a black exploitation movie. That came from a white reporter who was evaluating and judging these films and had to come up with some little cliche to take it aside from the main machine's work. Now, you got to realize when those movies were coming out and being made for $250,000, $300,000, sometimes very rarely $1 million. What was Hollywood making? Thurgood Martin, Millie, Fanny Brice, and they were losing their butts. They lost so much money. And somebody sitting in their office today getting ready to get fired, he looked up and said, how much did Truck Turner make? How much did this make? How much did that make? Oh, my God. Let's co-op it. Let's take it over. And that's when you see this big shift from social commentary. You remember a movie called Putney Swope?
Yep.
You don't hear much about Putney Swope. That was resist. I was looking at the machine, how a black person survives in the machine. It was a funny, still one of the best movies. 5 on the Black Hand Side, Cooley High. All these movies were not black exploitation. They were a part of our culture at that time through the eyes of Schultz and these young folks who that's how they valued the world. Music, hip-hop. Hip-hop started with The Message and Rapper's Delight. It wasn't about her butt is bigger than this, I want this, I'll kill you, you kill me. That was co-opted. NWA wasn't created by black people. It was created by white people in the record business.
Well, and even to bring continuity to social media, Black Twitter, this network, it's a network of predominantly black Twitter users that's getting a lot of attention. Black Twitter didn't name itself Black Twitter. No. It was somebody from the outside. It was white bloggers who saw, oh my gosh, there are black people on Twitter. Well, we need a name for this.
Let's call ours White Twitter.
Right? Because this is obviously different than quote-unquote regular Twitter. We need a name for this. And so now it's a thing. It's a phenomenon. And that network of people have a choice to embrace and leverage or try and eschew the label. But, yeah, these labels always come from the outside.
On that
every
naming,
medium.
the naming issue.
There are bad white filmmakers who are making horrible social crap. I mean, I'm not a fan of Tarantino. I mean, Quentin. What's his name?
Yeah,
I tried not
Tarantino.
I'm not a fan of his. Only 1 or 2 films I love, Reservoir Dogs. But you look at the morality of his films, they don't call those white exploitation movies. So, I mean, we're all filmmakers are all filmmakers. I'm against censorship of any kind. What I try to do explain is the power of what it is you're doing. Malcolm X said, the most powerful force in the world is the media. The media has the power to make the guilty innocent and the innocent guilty. And now with the internet and social media, it happens like overnight. And you have no control of it. Judge, jury, prosecutor, doesn't matter. You're guilty if they choose to make you guilty.
Let's take a call. April calls us from Hampton. Hi, April. You're on the air.
Hi, April. Hey, Barbara. This is April Woodard.
Hi.
Hi to all my friends, my former boss, Tim, my friend, and my colleague, Dora. I wanted to ask a question in regards to film being an old school medium. Why is film still a relevant medium for students in particular? And I'm talking kind of to Dora and her students during the documentary. Why is it still valid as opposed to some of the other ones like going to Black Twitter or going to social media or the newer mediums as far as communicating our thoughts and our beliefs, particularly about this film?
Well, thank you.
Great to hear from you, April.
Thank you, April, for the question. I think even though we do have the social media, we do need to recognize that visual imagery still has power. It is a powerful communicator, and many of our students are visual learners. They would prefer to see it before and then actually perform
the whole millennial
function.
Generation.
Yes. So and it was just the same 100 years ago, where the visuals are even that much more powerful. audiences really didn't get a chance or really understand just how it impacted us. So we have 100 years of foresight, and we still see that it still impacts students. Students are still very surprised at now they see where the chicken eating watermelon, all of these stereotypes, where it came from, and I think it's extremely important for them to learn how to use visual media critically to help change the story, change the narrative that is being shown basically in the industry right now.
Okay, we only got about 6 minutes left, so I'm going to get some more calls. And Chuck is calling us from North Carolina. Hi, Chuck. You're on the air.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to say, you were talking about stereotypes, how I don't know if Hollywood, put that image of black people in white people's heads about blacks. But, for instance, my grandson and I went into the store to buy a few items, and he asked me, could he go to an end cap to pick up some cookies? And I told him, yeah, I just walked right around the corner to pick up some juice. And he told me that some white guy called him effing nigger. He's 7 years old. And sometimes I'll go into a store, to buy some clothes in a jewelry store or whatever. And I work 70, 80 hours a week. And, to have a white person watch you the whole time you're in the store, and I made sure that they were watching me because I'd move in different spots of the store, and they would move around to watch me, And I just think that that's not right, man. I work all those hours.
All right, so we have your point, Chuck. Thank you so much for the call. We appreciate that.
Yeah, that's the poison.
Go ahead.
I mean, the poison doesn't die. We're watching it in our country today, politically. All that poison that was spewed for the last 6 years after one person that they did not like and they hated, they wanted to kill Hope. Well, that poison may be effective at its target, but what they forget is that it doesn't die. It goes in the hearts and minds of other people who are in that sort of way.
Exactly.
So we're filled with a lot of poison. We really are. There are people running around who hate and don't even understand why.
Well, and I think it's important also to piggyback on what Tim is saying, to remember that if you look at the statistics, we are just as segregated today as we were in the mid-20th century, residentially, in terms of education.
Yeah.
It's just enforced by different mechanisms. And even in social media, most white folks don't have any non-white friends or followers in their social media networks.
Well, Facebook does it automatically. They look at you and they'll send you black or brown or Asian.
Yeah, they'll decide who you're friends with and who you're commenting, what you're commenting on, and decide. Facebook thinks I'm black because I guess I've hit the number of black friends.
Oh, you hit your limit.
Yeah, apparently, and I triggered the algorithm. So now they keep trying to sell me natural hair care products because they tailor the advertising. My friend was like, "It's because you have so many black friends on Facebook, but you're messing with the algorithm."
I love that.
But so these images take on a lot of importance because we're not actually interacting with each other in real life. So what we're getting is the image that's shaped by this poison that Tim is talking about.
Okay, let's see if we can get one last call. And Donna joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Donna. You're on the air. Donna, hi. You're on the air, Donna.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I just, first of all, thank you for taking my call. And I just wanted to quick ask the panel their thoughts or opinions on the whole Tyler Perry series as far as Medea is concerned. Do they see it as a negative stereotype or a stereotype, or do they see it as revelry of, the black mothers of the church, of the African-American church? And I'll take my answer off the air.
Okay, thank you, Donna. All right, 3 minutes. Who wants to handle it? Go
I'm
ahead,
not touching
Dora.
that.
Tyler Perry, as a filmmaker, Tyler Perry knows his audience. Young black women, middle-aged black women are filling the churches of America. They're having a hard time in life. They're not getting respect. And they go to these churches and they listen to this propaganda coming from this man who's preaching or whatever Savior through this, and Tyler Perry understood that audience, and he's built a fortune off of it. I can't get mad at him because he knew his audience. I hope soon he'll send Medea into outer space, but other than that, he's done a decent job. I mean, you go back in the days of race movies, over 500 were made. They were all not great movies. Oscar Micheaux was really not a great filmmaker. Wonderful producer, created things we use today. So you got to look at, again, go back to your purpose. What is he accomplishing? He's built a fortune. I admire that. His work is getting better. But who was his audience? These black women are saying to everyone, merchants anywhere, this is, give me some respect.
Give me something. Right. Yeah.
And the preachers right now and Tyler Perry are the ones who are taking major advantage. But that's what they're looking for. They're looking for some respect, some love.
Well, and television's starting to figure it out with the Shonda Rhimes shows. And
Empire.
But yeah, there are huge audiences that are just not being spoken to.
Yeah. Right. And I think it's just Tyler Perry's characters are just caricatures, and I can't take it. So I don't watch it, because I think it does serve a purpose. It gives an opportunity for, as you said, his audience to laugh at themselves. Mm-hmm. They see some truth in some of the stories that he tells, and they laugh at it. But for, like you said, the periphery, the others who are watching that, it's a whole other new stereotype.
They should do something about it. Okay. I tell these young women, build the new machine, because the empire is dying.
But I tell the students that they need to do that.
Unfortunately, we are just about out of time. I love it, but I want to tell you, audience, we have 4 pair of tickets available for Birth of an Answer for Monday night. At Old Dominion University, for the next 4 callers to 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. 4 callers. We have 4 pair of tickets. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. We'll be giving away those tickets, and we'll be right back.
I'm Gwen Eiffel of the PBS NewsHour and Washington Week, and you're listening to Another View on 89.5 WHRV-FM.
And many thanks to my panel. Award-winning producer and director Dr. Irene Zenabu Davis is in Hampton Roads this weekend as part of the Birth of an Answer celebration. Dr. Davis recently completed a documentary on the rise of the UCLA black filmmaker movement of the late 1960s. Filmmakers and actors, including herself, who remain devoted to creating black cinema that offers an alternative to Hollywood. She recently spoke with our Lisa Godley about the changes of being an African-American female filmmaker in the ever-changing movie industry.
She was born Irene Davis, but while studying abroad in Kenya in the early 80s, that changed.
There's not a lot of I names in Kenya, so they were like, what? I'm not calling you that. So the grandmother in the family decided to name me Zenabu, so I took it as my new name, and it means spirited sparrow.
But the spirited sparrow didn't always want to direct movies. In fact, when she started college at Brown in the late 1970s, her dream was to become an international lawyer.
As an A student who had gotten into Brown and then, had to take Econ 101 and failed it the first time and then got a C in it the second time, I was like, oh, no, I'm not doing the international relations. But at the same time that happened, I transitioned into an internship for public television in Rhode Island. We covered jazz. We covered Bob Marley when he went to Boston and all kinds of stuff. So I was very fortunate to be in her sphere and kind of get influenced by that. And then the will to become a filmmaker came from my experiences being in study abroad in Kenya.
As a director, Davis has produced numerous award-winning movies, but her passion is to tell stories about African-American women, their past, their future, and their dreams. She says even as a filmmaker, she's faced more difficulty as a woman than as an African-American.
As a woman director, you have to prove that you know all the technical stuff and keep up with stuff, because you will have men, sometimes black, white, red, brown, yellow, whatever, who will challenge your authority just because they don't necessarily think that a woman should be the director. It should be them who's directing.
When she's not directing, Davis enlightens the minds of future filmmakers, teaching film at the University of California. She's in Norfolk this weekend screening her documentary Spirits of Rebellion for students at Old Dominion University.
It's a documentary that talks about the LA Rebellion filmmakers. So this unique opportunity or moment in time actually began to produce filmmakers, and they are some of our leading filmmakers of today.
She says she's also excited about being able to talk about how the industry has changed since the film Birth of a Nation hit the big screen 100 years ago.
In my hometown of Philadelphia, there was violence around the screening of the film when it first played in 1915. But, I think we certainly have come a long way when you think about, we have an African-American president in the White House, President Barack Obama, and the film that he screened this year was Ava DuVernay's Selma. So the fact is not lost on me that Selma played in 2015 in the White House, where back in 1915, D.W. Griffith was welcome to show, Birth of a Nation to Woodrow Wilson. So I think we have come away quite a ways from that, thank God.
She goes on to say that while film can stir our emotions and change the way we think about things, it takes a lot more to change the world.
Certainly, it's a powerful tool to help direct conversation or discussion and debate among people. That's what I think is best at doing. And of course, it does entertain people as well. It is a very, very interesting and powerful art form, but I don't think it's like the sole thing that changes people's minds. I think it's all of us doing different things that change people's minds.
For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And we hope that you all will join us again for our Race Let's Talk About It Town Hall. It's next Saturday, September the 26th at 2 p.m. at Virginia Wesleyan's Boyd Center. The topic is The Flag is Down, Now What? It's free and open to everyone. Visit WHRO.org/talkaboutrace to find out more. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer. And I have no idea who answered our phones today. Jessica Dorsch did. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. And let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.